I never thought I'd see my husband's face twist with such contempt. Not at our son's 6th birthday party, surrounded by balloon animals and children's laughter. James slammed the papers onto the kitchen counter, his voice low but cutting through the cheerful chaos of the celebration. I want a paternity test, Emma. I want it now. Our guests froze. Ethan, our beautiful boy with a half-eaten slice of cake, looked up with confusion in his eyes that mirrored his father's so perfectly that the accusation felt like some sick joke. But this was no joke. This was my parents' ultimate betrayal, and they stood in the corner, watching their handiwork unfold with disturbing satisfaction in their eyes. The morning of Ethan's birthday had started like any celebration day, chaotic but filled with anticipation. I'd been up since dawn, hanging streamers and arranging dinosaur-themed decorations around our suburban home. James had been helping, though somewhat distracted lately, working longer hours and coming home exhausted. I'd attributed it to his recent promotion, the new responsibilities weighing on him. If only I'd known the real reason for his distance. James, can you hang these over the doorway? I asked, handing him a string of paper dinosaurs Ethan had helped color the previous weekend. He took them without meeting my eyes, something he'd been doing more frequently in the past week. I should have recognized it as a warning sign. Sure, he mumbled, reaching up to tape them above the entryway. What time are your parents getting here? The question seemed innocent enough, though there was an edge to his voice I couldn't quite place. Around 11. They're bringing that giant dinosaur cake Ethan's been talking about for months. I smiled, thinking of how my parents had insisted on ordering the specialty cake from an expensive bakery across town. One of their many attempts to buy our son's affection, and perhaps my forgiveness for years of conditional love. If only I'd known what they'd been planning all along. James and I had met in college, a whirlwind romance that my parents disapproved of from the start. James came from a working-class family, worked his way through school on scholarships and part-time jobs, while I was the daughter of prominent surgeon Richard Matthews and corporate attorney Martha Matthews. They'd had my life planned since birth: prestigious university, respectable career, marriage to someone from our circle. James, with his public school education and ambitions of becoming a high school teacher, didn't fit their narrative. He's beneath you, Emma, my mother had said when I first brought him home. He'll never be able to provide the life you deserve. But I defied them, marrying James 2 weeks after graduation. When I became pregnant with Ethan less than a year later, their disapproval deepened. They maintained a cold civility, occasionally visiting and sending expensive gifts, but the underlying tension never dissipated. It was only when James finally secured his position as department head at the local high school that they began showing genuine interest in our lives. Or so I thought. I was desperately seeking their approval, their acknowledgement that the life I'd chosen could be valuable despite not adhering to their plans. I thought their increased presence in our lives over the past year was progress. How naive I'd been. The doorbell rang at exactly 11, and there they stood, my father in his immaculate golf attire, my mother in her designer dress, both wearing picture-perfect smiles that never quite reached their eyes. "Happy birthday to our special boy," Mother cooed, brushing past me to find Ethan, the enormous dinosaur cake box in her arms. My father lingered in the doorway, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. "Everything all right, Dad?" I asked, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. He patted my shoulder, his touch formal and distant as always. "Of course, darling. Just thinking about how quickly time passes." There was something in his tone, something almost like regret, but tinged with anticipation. I should have pressed him further, should have demanded to know what was happening behind those calculating eyes. Instead, I welcomed him in, helping him carry the oversized gift they'd brought for Ethan. As my father entered, I noticed the brief, knowing glance he exchanged with James. My stomach nodded, but I pushed the feeling aside. Today was about Ethan, not the complicated dynamics between my husband and my parents. By noon, our backyard was filled with the controlled chaos of 6-year-olds running between games and treats. I'd hired a local teenager dressed as a paleontologist to lead dinosaur-themed activities, and Ethan was in his element, proudly wearing the dinosaur costume he'd insisted on despite the summer heat. I watched him from the patio, my heart full. This beautiful, kind-hearted boy who loved dinosaurs and building blocks and bedtime stories. He was worth every hardship, every sacrifice. James stood at the grill, flipping burgers for the parents who'd stayed, exchanging polite conversation, but oddly disconnected from the celebration. My parents had positioned themselves like royalty on the patio furniture, observing rather than participating. I noticed my father check his watch several times, then nod slightly to my mother. The knot in my stomach tightened. Their carefully orchestrated appearances always had purpose, always had design. I just couldn't see what they were planning. Not yet. The tension broke when Mrs. Abernathy, Ethan's kindergarten teacher and our neighbor, approached me with concern etched on her kind face. "Emma, dear, is everything all right with you and James?" she asked quietly, her eyes darting toward my husband. "He seems troubled." When I mentioned how much Ethan looks like him, those same expressive eyebrows, he almost dropped the spatula. I followed her gaze to James, who was now staring intensely at Ethan as he played. There was something tortured in his expression, something that sent a chill through me despite the warm June day. "I'm sure it's just stress from work," I assured her, though the lie tasted bitter. "The end of the school year is always hectic for him." She patted my arm, unconvinced. "Well, if you need anything, I'm just across the fence." As she walked away, I caught my mother watching our exchange, a slight smile playing at her lips. Not a warm smile. No, this was the smile I'd seen in courtrooms when she'd cornered a witness. The smile of someone watching their trap about to spring shut. It happened during cake time. We'd gathered everyone around the patio table, the enormous dinosaur cake commanding center stage. Ethan's face glowed with excitement as we lit the candles, his friends crowding around him. I stood behind him, my hands resting protectively on his small shoulders, while James positioned himself across the table, camera ready, but his eyes strangely vacant. "Make a wish, sweetheart," I encouraged as Ethan took a deep breath. He closed his eyes tight, his little face scrunched in concentration, then blew with all his might. As everyone cheered, James abruptly lowered the camera and muttered something about needing air. He disappeared into the house. My father, with a performative sigh, announced he'd check on him. "Men," my mother said with a practiced laugh, helping me cut the cake as if nothing were amiss. But my instincts were screaming now, warning me that something terrible was happening just beyond the laughter and celebration. After serving cake to the children, I excused myself and slipped into the house. Voices drifted from the kitchen, James and my father, their tones hushed but intense. I moved closer, staying out of sight in the hallway. "I just don't understand why you're showing me this now, Richard," James was saying, his voice strained. "At our son's birthday party, of all times." "I've been trying to find the right moment," my father replied, his surgeon's voice precise and controlled. "But after our conversation last week, I couldn't in good conscience let this continue. You deserve to know the truth about the boy." "The boy. Not your grandson. Not Ethan. The boy." My blood ran cold. "These medical records," James said, his voice breaking. "They can't be right. Emma would never." "I wish that were true," my father said with rehearsed solemnity. "But the blood type doesn't lie, James. It's biologically impossible for you to be Ethan's father." "I'm sorry." I must have made a sound. A gasp, a whimper, something, because both men turned as I stepped into the kitchen. James held papers in his trembling hands, his face ashen. My father wore an expression of practiced concern, but I could see it now, the triumphant gleam in his eyes. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. James thrust the papers toward me. "Blood type records, Emma. From Ethan's birth." His voice hardened. "According to these, it's impossible for me to be his father." "Want to explain that?" I grabbed the papers, scanning them quickly. They looked authentic, hospital letterhead, proper formatting, except for one glaring detail. The blood types were wrong. "This is a lie," I said, my voice gaining strength as anger replaced shock. "These records are fake. Ethan's blood type is a positive, just like yours, James." "I'm O positive." "These papers saying he's AB, That's simply not true. My father stepped forward, his expression a masterpiece of concern. Emma, darling, denial won't help now. I obtained these directly from Dr. Thompson's office. Dr. Thompson, my father's colleague, a man who owed his position to my father's influence. You obtained falsified records, I corrected, my hands shaking with rage. You've been planning this for how long, Dad? Since Ethan was born? Or is this a more recent project? James looked between us, confusion replacing some of the anger on his face. What's she talking about, Richard? My father placed a paternal hand on James's shoulder. She's distraught, obviously. Finding out her deception is exposed my deception. I nearly screamed the words, mindful of the party continuing outside. You're the ones deceiving everyone. Why would you do this? What could you possibly gain from destroying our family? The kitchen door swung open, and my mother entered, her timing impeccable as always. Is everything all right? The children are asking where you've gone. She took in the scene, the papers in my hand, the confrontation underway, and had the audacity to look concerned. What's happening here? They're happening, Mom, I said, gesturing between my parents. They've falsified Ethan's medical records to make James believe he's not the father. Tell me, was this your idea or Dad's? It has your particular brand of cruelty, making the reveal happen at Ethan's birthday party. My mother's perfectly composed face revealed nothing, but I'd spent a lifetime reading the minute tell she tried to hide. The slight twitch at the corner of her mouth confirmed everything. Emma, you're being hysterical, she said calmly. James deserved to know the truth. James looked lost, his world crumbling around him. I don't understand, he said. Why would your parents lie about this? What would be the point? The realization dawned on his face slowly, painfully. Unless they're not lying and you are. And there it was, exactly what they'd wanted. Doubt. Suspicion. The fracturing of trust that had taken us years to build. James, look at me, I pleaded, reaching for his hand. He flinched away. Look at our son. He has your eyes, your smile, your terrible sense of humor. He's yours in every way possible. Blood doesn't lie, my father interjected smoothly. And frankly, Emma's behavior right now speaks volumes. I rounded on him. Stop it. Just stop. Haven't you done enough damage? You've hated James from the beginning. You've never accepted my choices. And now you're willing to destroy an innocent child's life just to prove yourselves right. My mother stepped closer, her voice lowered to ensure the party guests wouldn't hear. We're only thinking of your future, Emma. This marriage was a mistake from the start. You know it, we know it. James isn't from our world. He can't provide what you need. What I need? I was incredulous. What I need is my family. My husband. My son. What I don't need is your manipulation and your lies. James stood frozen, the papers still clutched in his hand. I want a paternity test, he said suddenly, his voice hard with resolve. I want proof, one way or another. My parents exchanged triumphant glances, thinking they'd won. But I saw something they didn't, the flicker of doubt in James's eyes. Not doubt about Ethan, but doubt about the situation itself. James was a science teacher. He understood genetics. Something wasn't adding up for him. Fine, I agreed, surprising them all. We'll get a test. Today. Now. My mother's composure faltered slightly. Don't be ridiculous, Emma. It's Ethan's birthday. You can't just leave in the middle of his party. Watch me, I challenged. In fact, let's make this interesting. If the test proves James is Ethan's father, you will both admit what you've done, to James, to me, to everyone. And then you'll leave us alone. For good. My father's face hardened. And if it proves otherwise? It won't, I said with absolute certainty. But if it did, I would admit everything. Fortunately, I have nothing to confess. I turned to James, whose expression had shifted from anger to uncertainty. James, I have never been unfaithful to you. Not once, not ever. Ethan is your son. These people, my parents, they've been trying to separate us since the day we met. This is just their most desperate attempt yet. There was a moment of heavy silence in the kitchen, broken only by the muffled sounds of children playing outside. Then, surprising us all, James pulled out his phone. I'm calling Dr. Reeves, he said, referring to our family doctor. He'll know what to do. And he has all of Ethan's actual medical records. He fixed my father with a cold stare. If what Emma says is true, and you've falsified medical documents, that's a serious offense, Richard. Your medical license would be at risk. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross my father's face. He hadn't expected James to think clearly through his anger. He'd expected blind rage, not methodical challenge. My mother stepped in smoothly. There's no need to involve outside parties. This is a family matter, a family matter. James interrupted, his voice rising. You accuse my wife of infidelity, claim my son isn't mine, and you want to keep it private? No, Martha. Not this time. While James made the call, stepping into the living room for privacy, I confronted my parents directly. Why now? I demanded. Why wait 6 years to launch this particular missile? My father's jaw tightened. You were supposed to come to your senses years ago, Emma. This marriage, this life you've chosen, it's beneath you. We gave you time to realize your mistake. My mistake, I repeated, incredulous. My loving husband? My beautiful son? The life that makes me happy? That mistake. My mother sighed dramatically. Look around you, Emma. This tiny house. Your husband's mediocre career. You could have had so much more. More what, mother? More material possessions? More status? More misery? I gestured toward the window where Ethan could be seen playing with his friends. I have everything I need. Everything that matters. James returned, his expression unreadable. Dr. Reeves is waiting for us at his office. He's agreed to do an emergency paternity test. Results will take a few days, but he's also pulling up Ethan's complete medical history right now. He looked directly at my father, including his blood type as recorded at birth and at every checkup since. My father maintained his composure, but I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He'd underestimated James's connections, his resources. He'd expected James to rely solely on the falsified information provided to him. What about the party? My mother interjected, attempting to redirect. All these children? You can't just leave. Mrs. Abernathy has agreed to oversee things until we return, James replied. I've explained there's a family emergency. He checked his watch. The party's scheduled to end in an hour anyway. We should be back before then. As we prepared to leave, I pulled James aside in the hallway. James, look at me, I pleaded. Really look at me. In the 15 years we've been together, have I ever given you reason to doubt me? To doubt us? His eyes, so like Ethan's, searched mine. No, he admitted quietly. Which is why this blindsided me so completely. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. Your parents, they came to me last week, said they had concerns. That they'd noticed things about Ethan that didn't add up. Then your father showed me those records today, and I just lost faith. I finished for him. Exactly what they wanted. He looked pained. I should have talked to you first. I know that. But seeing those papers, thinking about the timing of your pregnancy. James, I was pregnant 2 months after our wedding. We were still living in that terrible apartment with the leaky ceiling, remember? We were practically children ourselves. A small smile touched his lips. That broken futon. That we'd push onto the floor when the frame collapsed. I continued, seeing recognition dawn in his eyes. Ethan was conceived on that stupid futon, James. There was never anyone else. Not before you, not during, not ever. The drive to Dr. Reeves' office was tense, my parents following in their luxury sedan, maintaining the charade of concerned grandparents. In the back seat, Ethan sat quietly, confused by the abrupt departure from his own party, but distracted by the tablet we'd given him. Why are we going to the doctor on my birthday? He asked innocently. James met my eyes briefly before answering. Just a quick stop, buddy. Grandma and Grandpa think you might need some medicine, but we're pretty sure you're perfectly healthy. Dr. Reeves is going to help us figure it out. I reached back to squeeze Ethan's knee reassuringly. We'll be back at your party before you know it, sweetheart. He nodded, returning to his game, blissfully unaware of the adult drama swirling around him. Dr. Reeves, a kind, grandfatherly man who had been caring for our family since Ethan's birth, greeted us in his private office rather than an exam room. "I've pulled all of Ethan's records," he said without preamble, including the blood work from his birth and his last physical 4 months ago. He spread several documents on his desk, genuine hospital records with unaltered information. "Ethan's blood type is a positive, consistent across all tests. James, your blood type is a positive as well. Emma, you're O positive." He looked directly at my father. "Dr. Matthews, as a medical professional, you know this is a completely viable combination for parent and child. The father with A and the mother with O can produce a child with A." My father's face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "The records I obtained clearly showed falsified information," Dr. Reeves interrupted firmly. "I've already contacted Dr. Thompson about the discrepancy. He was quite shocked to learn his records had been altered." The color drained from my father's face. "Thompson told you that?" Dr. Reeves nodded gravely. "He's pulling the original files as we speak." He seemed quite concerned about potential fraud involving his practice. My mother stepped forward, switching tactics with practiced ease. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding. Perhaps a clerical error." "Oh, please," I interjected. "Enough with the lies, Mother. It's over." I turned to Dr. Reeves. "We'd still like the paternity test, Doctor. For the record." He nodded understandingly. "Of course. It's a simple procedure, just a cheek swab for James and Ethan." Though given the blood types and he paused, looking meaningfully at Ethan, who was examining a model skeleton in the corner of the office, the rather obvious physical resemblance, I have no doubts about the outcome. The tension in the room was palpable as Dr. Reeves collected the samples. My parents stood stiffly by the door, their perfect facade beginning to crack. My father's reputation in the medical community was now at risk. My mother's carefully cultivated image of family perfection threatened. They'd overplayed their hand, never expecting their scheme to unravel so quickly. After the samples were collected, Dr. Reeves promised results within 3 to 5 days. Though again, he emphasized, looking pointedly at my parents, the blood type evidence alone confirms paternal compatibility. As we prepared to leave, James lingered, speaking quietly with the doctor. I caught fragments, legal implications, and falsifying medical records and ethics board. My father, overhearing the same, paled further. The ride back to our house was silent, thick with unspoken accusations and simmering anger. My parents followed in their car, presumably to maintain appearances at the party, though I suspected they were already planning their exit strategy. As we pulled into our driveway, James reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I should have trusted you." I squeezed his fingers, relief and residual hurt warring within me. "Yes, you should have. But I understand why you were shaken. They presented you with what looked like irrefutable evidence." He shook his head. "Still, 15 years together. I know you, Emma. I know your heart. I should have questioned the documents, not your fidelity." Ethan unbuckled himself in the back seat. "Can I go back to my party now?" he asked, his innocence a stark contrast to the adult complexities surrounding him. James smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time that day. "Absolutely, buddy. It's still your special day." Inside, the party had continued smoothly under Mrs. Abernathy's watchful eye. Only a few parents remained, supervising the final games and helping to clean up. My parents made a brief appearance, their social masks firmly in place, before making excuses about a prior engagement. As my mother hugged me goodbye, a stiff, performative gesture, she whispered, "This isn't over, Emma. You're making a mistake." I pulled back, meeting her eyes directly. "No, Mother. The mistake was yours. Thinking you could manipulate us, control us. We're done." My father attempted a similar farewell, but James intercepted him at the door. "I've spoken with Dr. Thompson," James informed him quietly. "He's quite interested in how his records were altered. Expects to have the original documents and the falsified ones side by morning." My father's practiced composure faltered. "James, surely we can discuss this like reasonable men reasonable." James interrupted. You tried to convince me my son wasn't mine. You were willing to destroy your daughter's marriage, your grandson's security. There's nothing reasonable about that. After my parents' departure, the party wound down naturally. Ethan, exhausted but happy, fell asleep surrounded by his new toys, the dramatic interlude apparently forgotten in the joy of his special day. James and I cleaned quietly, the weight of the day's events settling around us. Why did they do it? He finally asked, collapsing onto the couch beside me. What could they possibly hope to gain? I leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Control, I said simply. They've never approved of you, of us. They thought if they could break us apart, I'd return to the fold. Become the daughter they always wanted, obedient, compliant, living the life they prescribed. James wrapped an arm around me. They underestimated you. Underestimated us. They always have, I agreed. But this was a new low. Using Ethan as a pawn. I shuddered. I can't forgive that. Not ever. Later that night, after Ethan was tucked into bed, James and I sat in our backyard, the remnants of the party still evident in the sagging balloons and scattered streamers. The moon cast everything in gentle silver light, softening the hard edges of the day. I keep thinking about what could have happened, James admitted, his voice low. If Dr. Reeves hadn't been available. If we hadn't caught the lie so quickly. He reached for my hand. They could have destroyed us today. But they didn't, I reminded him. Their plan failed because what we have is real. Solid. I paused, a realization dawning. And because you still had enough faith in us to seek the truth, not just accept their version of it. He squeezed my fingers. I almost didn't. That's what scares me. For a few minutes there, in the kitchen. I know, I said softly. I saw it in your eyes. You believed them. Not completely, he clarified. But enough to doubt. To question. He looked toward Ethan's bedroom window. I'm so sorry, Emma. I shifted to face him fully. What matters is what happens now. Where we go from here. James nodded, his expression resolute. First, I think we need some distance from your parents. Real distance, not just the polite boundaries we've tried to maintain. Agreed, I said firmly. What they did was unforgivable. I don't want them near Ethan, not until he's old enough to understand and protect himself from their manipulation. James hesitated. Are you sure? They're still his grandparents. Still your parents. I thought of all the years of conditional love, of subtle undermining, of disapproval disguised as concern. I'm sure. Family isn't just blood, James. It's trust. It's support. It's love without strings attached. They've proven time and again they don't understand that. I leaned my head against his shoulder. You and Ethan are my family. My real family. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through our bedroom window, my phone rang. Dr. Thompson, my father's colleague, sounded uncomfortable. Emma, I needed to speak with you directly. Your father, well, this is difficult. He apparently coerced one of my lab technicians into creating falsified records. His voice hardened. I've already dismissed the technician, and I've reported the incident to the medical board. Your father's actions constitute a serious ethical breach. I closed my eyes, absorbing the confirmation of what I already knew. Thank you for telling me, Doctor. Will you be pressing charges? There was a pause. I'm considering it. At minimum, there will be an ethics investigation. Your father's medical license could be suspended, possibly revoked. As I hung up, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for what might have been. My parents, with all their resources and privileges, could have been a positive force in our lives. Instead, they'd chosen manipulation and control. James found me in the kitchen, staring into a cup of coffee gone cold. Everything okay? He asked, concern evident in his voice. I relayed Dr. Thompson's call, watching comprehension dawn on his face. So they're facing real consequences this time. Finally, I agreed. Though I doubt they'll see it as justice. More likely they'll view themselves as martyrs, sacrificing everything for their misguided attempt to save me from my choices. James sat beside me, his presence steadying. What do you need from me? Right now. The question was so simple, so direct, yet no one had asked me that in a very long time. Tears welled unexpectedly. Just this I managed. Just you, believing in us. In me. He gathered me close, his heartbeat solid and reassuring against my cheek. Always, he promised. No matter what documents they forge next. The attempted humor surprised a laugh from me, watery but genuine. Ethan found us like that, still embracing in the morning light. Are you sad, Mommy? He asked, climbing onto my lap with the unself-conscious ease of childhood. I held him close, breathing in the scent of sleep and innocence. Not anymore, baby. Not with you here. He seemed satisfied with this answer, turning his attention to more pressing matters. Can I play with my new dinosaurs? James ruffled his hair, our son's hair, the same texture as his own. After breakfast, buddy. How about pancakes? As Ethan cheered his approval, racing to the pantry to help gather ingredients, I watched them together. The same mannerisms, the same enthusiastic approach to even the simplest tasks. How could anyone who saw them together ever doubt their connection? Over breakfast, as Ethan chattered about his party and his friends and his dinosaurs, James caught my eye across the table. There was love there, and remorse and determination. We'd weathered my parents' worst attack, and though there were bruises, we remained unbroken. There would be legal ramifications to navigate, boundaries to establish, wounds to heal. But watching my husband and son together, their heads bent over a syrup-drenched plate as they debated which dinosaur could defeat which in mythical combat, I knew with absolute certainty that we would be okay. More than okay. We had chosen each other, created this family with intention and love. My parents had never understood that the strength in our bond came not from social standing or financial security, but from something far more fundamental: respect, trust, and a willingness to fight for what mattered. Later, as Ethan napped, exhausted from his birthday excitement, James and I sat on the porch swing, a rare moment of quiet in our busy lives. Do you think they'll ever understand what they almost destroyed? He asked, his fingers laced through mine. I considered the question, thinking of my parents' rigid worldview, their inability to see value in choices different from their own. Probably not, I admitted. They spent a lifetime believing they know best. That kind of certainty doesn't leave room for self-reflection. I leaned against him, taking comfort in his solid presence. But it doesn't matter anymore. What they think, what they believe, it can't touch us now. James nodded, understanding in his eyes. We make our own family, he said simply. Our own traditions, our own values. Our own truths, I added. As the afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across our modest yard, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The path forward was clear now, unburdened by the weight of parental expectations and manipulations. We would raise Ethan with love and honesty, teaching him that family was created through actions, not merely through blood. And if the paternity test results came back confirming what we already knew with absolute certainty, we would file them away. Irrefutable evidence against any future attempts to undermine our family, but ultimately unnecessary. We knew the truth. We were living it every day.